Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going to have some Division 20 ranked online gameplay, and we're going to be using Amanda Nunes, who is right now arguably the GOAT. And I mean, if you look at her resume, you can see why people would argue that she's the GOAT. I mean, she's beat Ronda Rousey, Chris Cyborg, Misha Tate, Holly Holm, Duranda May, and she's fighting Anderson next. She's also beat Chichenko, and you can see how dominant Valentina is, and that's who we're coming up against now. So you can see why she's considered the GOAT, and on this game, she is a problem. I mean, she is just so good. But it's accurate. I mean, there's not much you can say, and we're coming up against the next best thing, which is Valentina Shevchenko in the bantamweight division. And as you can see, I've beat this opponent once before, and this opponent's a very, very good opponent. You see, Season 2 to Season 5, always been in Division 20, so I was expecting a high level fight. And obviously you know that Valentina is extremely well rounded, extremely versatile, and if you're coming up against a good Valentina, they're going to work in the kickboxing range and look to take you down, and overall she's just a very hard puzzle to pick. So obviously I'm using Amanda Nunes, so I've got the power advantage, and that's something I'm going to look to utilise in our boxing exchanges. Predominantly I want to keep the fight standing, and if it does go to the ground, I'm going to do my best to contain my opponent off my back. I'm going to look to deny transitions, and also I'm going to go for submissions. I mean, Amanda Nunes' jiu-jitsu is very good, and on the game she's got decent grappling stats, so there's enough to do damage on the ground. There's no way you can take the fight where Amanda Nunes won't be comfortable. I mean, very good in the clinch, good at boxing, kickboxing, wrestling's good, and on the ground she's good. It's just Valentina that I believe has the slight advantage in that aspect, and if my opponent's gonna look to have some success in this fight, he's gonna have to look to take me down, and that's exactly what he's doing within the first round here. And as I always say, first round in the 5-round fight, I'm always very cautious. I'm looking to pick up on small details and figure out patterns to how my opponent's fighting, and based off these patterns I'll look to formulate a game plan for the next 4 rounds and hope potentially come away with the victory. And right now I can see that my opponent's stand up it's okay. He's obviously shot for he's shot for a takedown already, I believe, which I denied. Then I got in the clinch and took my opponent down, and now my opponent successfully landed a takedown. Luckily the takedown that my opponent's now just got is near the cage, so if need be I can utilise the cage and cage walk my way back to the feet. And right now my opponent's on top. I'm not doing too much, I'm just looking to see what he's doing, deny transitions, and that right there is a great example. If someone tries to go top mount and you end up getting to full guard, they normally stay stuck in that transition, so you can deny it quite easily and then you can end up on top. We done that, and then we end up getting up because we had the advantage on the feet, and I'm not looking to show my opponent how good I am on the ground. I'm just going to look to use that as a last resort if need be, and I'll end up on top in the later rounds. Then I'll look to punish my opponent. And you see right now on the stand up, I believe I'm getting the better of the exchanges. I land a beautiful body uppercut, and those body uppercuts with Nunes are so damaging. I mean, in general they're a very strong strike, but with Nunes in particular, it's just she's got so much power. And as you see, my opponent does a good job there of is it the spinning back heel hits me, and he ends up rocking me. But because my opponent's stamina has been drained, my opponent couldn't do much, and we wind up on top here. And if we hadn't have missed that straight, which I didn't even mean to go for, but had we not have missed that, I believe we would have got my opponent out of there with the ground and pound. So looking at the stats for round 1, you can see it's a very dominant round in my favour. The knockdown, of course, has got to win me the round either way, and my opponent now is going to have to make big adjustments coming out in the second round. Going to have to look to expand on the takedowns and look to control me further, and of course I know my opponent's going to plan to do this. As you can see, my opponent loves throwing that spinning kick to the body after the jab, so it's something I've tried to pick up on. And what my opponent's done here is a classic thing to do. You'll find this in every Division 20 game is work you to the clinch and take your back and drag you down. It's a very good way to get takedowns. It's a tool I utilise myself. It's very hard to defend against. Obviously, if you defend that takedown, they can then implement the turns, and the turning takedowns are obviously harder to deny. Now my opponent's on my back, and here obviously Valentina's got the chokes, so I need to be careful. I want to keep my stamina in a good enough position to where if my opponent goes for a submission, I'd be able to get out. And my opponent goes for a submission here, and I'm just remaining calm. It's a joint submission. My opponent ends up giving up on the submission, as you can see that I was going to get out, and my opponent chose the position over submission. My opponent then mistakenly goes for a ground and pound, throws us straight, and now we're back onto the feet. And so now we're back onto the feet. I'm going to look to implement as much damage as possible as we get another stun there, and now we get the knockdown. And what you can see here is that my opponent's head health is not in a good position, and I'm going to try work the body more. As you can see, my opponent's stamina flashes there, and now you can see that my game plan, I'm going to heavily attack the body as well as the head, and I'm looking to drain my opponent's stamina. My opponent shoots a takedown, does a good job of getting me to the ground, and here I know that my opponent's stamina isn't in the best position, so he needs to keep me on the ground, and I'm actually content with being on my back here. I'm just going to look to deny the crucifix as I do so here, and I'm just going to remain calm and try to figure out a way to either get up or attack a submission, because as I said before, Amanda Nunes has very good submissions. They're very underrated, and I often submit people with armbar. So I'm going to look to get Valentina into my full guard, and because I haven't attempted a submission as of yet, my opponent won't really be expecting it. So we deny my opponent's posture up, and we're just throwing strikes, and I didn't go for it straight away because I thought my opponent would expect it. We go for it the second time, and this is very important because here I can test my opponent's ability to escape submissions, and this is just a mental note because my opponent's constantly going to try to get me to the ground. If in the later rounds need be I see my opponent doesn't have much stamina, I can look for a submission and base off of this how likely I am to pull off the submission. And as you can see, we're not long on the clock. We're not far off summiting Valentina, but my opponent does a good job of getting out, and this gave me a lot of confidence knowing that my opponent can be submitted if need be. So that was the end of round 2. Obviously we got the knockdown that round, we had a stun that round. My opponent, I believe, landed 2 takedowns successfully, but overall I'd say another very good round for me. I mean, one thing of note from that round is that my opponent's head health and stamina isn't in the best position. As you can see, I'm trying to utilise that teep kick. My opponent throws the same spinning kick and goes for a takedown. And if you look at my stamina's in a very, very good position. It's probably about 85% going into this third round, so I can unload if I need to. And I know my opponent's stamina is going to be a lot less, potentially around 60%. And this takedown deny there is big, not only for my confidence, but it shows my opponent I'm not going to be that easy to take down. As we pull off another deny there and we scramble. I know my opponent's going to clinch, does a good job of clinching and getting me to the fence. And it's just so hard to deny. I mean, the clinch is one thing that EA need to improve on drastically, because the clinch in this game is awful for the fighter that's trying to defend it. I mean, once you're in the clinch, you pretty much can't do anything. It needs to be redone so it's a 50-50, so that the defensive fighter can actually do something. As you can see, my opponent here is trying to go for the armbar, and I'm happy to just sit here and deny. I either wait for the ref to stand us up, but I'm assuming my opponent will go backside. My opponent ends up getting the top mount, and again, I'm not really worried here. I know my opponent's going to look for the submission, so I'm keeping my stamina as high as possible. And that's the main thing that I always try to say when you're on the ground against someone that you know wants to submit you, is you've got to remain calm. And I know that Valentina has excellent submissions, so I'm going to keep my stamina as high as possible. My opponent's also evidently losing this fight. It's very clear to see my opponent's losing, so I know my opponent needs to pull off a submission victory, because if he gets to defeat, I'm more than comfortable in knocking out my opponent. Valentina's head health is extremely low, stamina's low, so I can work the body, I can work the head, and there'll be no issues with it. And I've won the first 2 rounds, and in this round here my opponent's got a lot of control time, so you're arguably looking at a 10-8 round if things stay like this. And the reason I'm not worried is I do not mind giving my opponent 1 round of success, because next round's going to start on the feet, and I do not need much to knock out my opponent. I just really ideally need to stay away from the fence, control the centre of the octagon, and I land 1 or 2 punches, my opponent's going to drop. And so that's the reason I'm so comfortable with being off my back here. I'm not constantly trying to get up. You've got to know the situation you're in, and right now I'm in a pretty good situation. My opponent goes for the submission again. There's 37 seconds left, so right now I know that my opponent, if they go for a submission, doesn't have enough time to get it off. He's just looking to do it for the judges' scorecards. My opponent here goes for the submission, and as you can see, my opponent is actually trying to get to the later stages, so I'm actively trying to get out. I wanted to get out on the first stage ideally, so the judges don't score the submission too highly, but my opponent done a good job of getting to the second stage. From that submission attempt of the armbar, I could tell that my opponent's submissions aren't actually that great, so I wasn't overly worried about being on the ground. That round there where my opponent dominated me on the ground, well, had the control time, realistically should have scared me, but it gave me so much confidence knowing that my ground game is more than enough to deal with this. And straight away off the bat my opponent takes me down, because understandably that's what my opponent has to do. And now that it's in round 4, I've just been grappled a lot in the previous round, and my opponent got a lot of control time. This round I'm not looking for the same thing to happen. I'm going to be more active, and I'm going to look for ways to get up. And when I do get up, I'm going to press the finish, because my opponent's not in a good position. And as you can see, my opponent goes for the Kimura there, mixing it up, but you've got to know the fighter you're fighting against. You've got to know what Valentina has on the ground, and I know she has that beautiful Kimura, which is incredibly hard to defend. She's got very good arm bars, very good chokes as well. Overall, she's good for it, and if she gets you in the crucifix, it's very hard to get out. But right here, I'm not going to make the same mistake as last time. I try to get up, so my opponent denies. And here we deny the back mount, because my opponent's been going for that consistently. I try to get back side, but my opponent denies that. And I'm looking to see what my opponent does here. And as soon as that animation goes where my opponent tries to step over, we deny. My opponent's stamina flashes. And we go to get up. And we're still in the clinch here. I'm denying, but didn't pull off the right denial. My opponent gets me straight back down. And again, I'm just remaining calm. I'm not worried. You've got to trust that something good's going to happen. And so my opponent here's got me in back sitting, and I know that if I get up this round I can finish the fight. I know that with 100% confidence. And there's 2 minutes left on the clock. I know I can get my opponent out of here. So we transition to full guard, because we got up before he took me down. The time before that we tried to get backside, my opponent denied it. So here we get the deny, and I was thinking of going for submission, but I chose the safer option, which was to get up, because I've already used the armbar before. And now I know my opponent's done for. As you can see, I'm putting on the pressure. I'm controlling that centre, moving in and out of the range. My opponent has no stamina. As you can see, rocked already, dropped. I'm not going to get in the guard. 1-2. My opponent goes into the cage, and we get the finish. My opponent rage quits, unfortunately, so I can't show you the stats, and I lose out some points. But that's the video using the GOAT Amanda Nunes. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.